Hello and welcome to Mastering in the Box. In today's video I'm going to show you 5 tips to help you practice your critical listening. Hi folks, Smudge here and welcome to Mastering in the Box. In today's video I'm going to show you 5 different techniques to help you practice your critical listening so you can get better with your mixing and mastering. But before we get into the content of today's video, if you want to know more about digital mastering, then make sure you hit that subscribe button below and make sure you tick that bell and select all to receive notifications on all of our videos moving forward. So critical listening. One of the most frequent questions I get asked is how can you improve your skills when it comes to critical listening, and how can you get better at listening exactly for what a song needs when it comes to mastering. And without sounding too flippant, a lot of it is down to practice and repetition, but there are some great techniques that you can use to really enhance your critical listening skills. So a multiband compressor is great for applying compression to different bands, but it's also a fantastic tool to help you practice with your critical listening. And in this particular example I've set 4 very clear bands with the multiband compressor. So we've got a band from 0Hz to 150, from 156 to 1K, from 1.01k all the way up to 5k and 5k and above. We're not going to use this to compress, we're just going to use this to listen to the different bands to understand what different instruments are in each of the different bands, so we can really start to get to highlight and target where we need to apply any processing inside of the mastering session. So let's just have a quick play and I'll show you this in real time. So just by using the multiband compressor in this way, say not to compress but just using it as a listening tool to really highlight what's going on in each of the different bands, can really help you to associate different instruments with different frequencies and really aid your critical listening in this particular way. So the next tip that I'm going to recommend is to use an analog style EQ plugin. So an analog emulation EQ plugin, and in this particular example this is the RC500 EQ, which is part of the Fat Channel plugin from PreSonus. I love using these, very visual type of EQs. So this particular example, this is the Equal by T-Rax from YK Multimedia, and this gives me a lot of information. So let's play a bit of the track here. And I just want you to take a look at what happens between 50 and 100 Hertz. So there's a very clear and distinct peak between 50 and 100 Hertz. By using this kind of visual type of EQ, you might look at that and think, oh, that doesn't look right. It looks a little bit out of step with the rest of the song. So I might want to perform some kind of subtractive EQ in that area to kind of reduce it. But that's not what it's about. We need to really focus on what it sounds like rather than what it looks like. And sometimes by using these visual EQs, it can really kind of trick us into maybe doing some moves that we may not necessarily need to. So if you really want to practice your EQing when it comes to mastering and focus on the critical listening side, then use an analog emulation style EQ, because you're not going to have that visual representation of what's happening in the stereo field, and you can really focus your attention and your listening on how the song sounds rather than what it looks like. So the next tip that I'm going to recommend is to use a plugin like the Tokyo Dawn Labs TDR Kotelnikov mastering compressor, and this is going to really help you to understand how a mastering compressor works. And I say this because this has a function called the delta, and this button really, what it's going to do is it's going to show you what frequencies and what sounds are being compressed based on what settings you apply to the compressor. So in this particular example I've got a relatively quick attack, relatively slow release. I'm just going to bring the threshold up to get a couple of dBs worth of gain reduction. I'm not doing this for any other reason, just for illustrative purposes. So let's just play the track and let's get a couple of dBs worth of gain reduction. Okay, that's fine. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to play the track again and then engage the delta function, and all this is going to do is it's just going to then play back the frequencies that are being compressed. So let's take a listen. So by using a plugin of this type that has got that delta function, it really allows you to hone in on those individual frequencies that are being compressed, and it's really going to help you to understand how a compressor works and the sound that you're going to get from using a mastering compressor in this particular example. So the next step is really making sure that you're volume matching your before and after plugin processing. And the reason why you really need to do this is you don't want to be fooled by any volume difference. And as humans, we perceive louder to be better. It's just a natural part of the human physiology, and it's just something that we need to kind of get out of the habit of doing. Just because it's louder doesn't mean it is better. So we need to really be kind of subjective and objective with the processing that we're doing, and really get a good handle on what are the actual plugins that we're using. What are they doing except for increasing the volume? You can go through and you can really go through the individual plugins and start to volume match and go down that route. But in this particular example, I'm going to show you a plugin by TB Pro Audio, which is the ABLM plugin. And you have one at the beginning of the chain and you have one at the end of the chain. And you have the beginning one, which is in send mode, and you have the last one, which is in receive mode. And what this is going to allow you to do is to volume match the track. So we've got our multiband compressor that is in bypass, we've got our fat channel EQ, and I've just applied some nominal EQ moves. Once again, there's nothing in particular that I've done here except for just for illustrative purposes. We've got the same compression settings as we just used, and then what we're then going to do is use the ABLM plugin to volume match so we can get a real good understanding as to what the processing is doing. So let's take a listen. So this is going to allow us to really focus on what the plugins are doing except for adding volume. So it's taken the volume addition out of the equation so we can just focus on what changes the plugins are making to the overall master and really allow us to focus on that rather than being deceived by any volume increases. And the final tip that I want to just really kind of re-emphasize, and this is something I've spoken about before, but referencing is so important when it comes to mastering. And if you're mastering a particular track that has drawn inspiration from a particular artist, then use some music by that artist to draw inspiration from when it comes to your mastering, and really take note of how the mastered track is a finished, finalised and polished product, and think about what it is you like about that particular track. What is it the client likes about that track, and try and draw inspiration from that and use that when it comes to your mastering moves. And once again, it can be used in lots of different ways. So in this particular example, this is the original track, this is the finished final master track, and we can use this just as a reference tool. I've got the track set up in solo follow selection, so when I play the track, I just click on each of the track and it will solo those individual tracks so we can get a good comparison on the before and after. So clearly we'd need to do some kind of volume matching to really get the most from this. But once we've done the volume matching, then just go through and start to make some notes. What is it, what is it we really want to focus on? Do we need some more punch in the low end? Do we need some more compression to kind of give some more oomph? Do we want to use a multiband compressor in the low end, etc.? What about the high end? Have we got enough air in the high end? Do we need to kind of give the overall track some more brightness? So just use your references. You really start to understand what your reference tracks sound like, and then try and draw inspiration from that when it comes to mastering your final song. So those are the 5 tips that I just really want to recommend for critical listening. So just to recap, look at your multiband compressor and use it in solo function. Have 3 or 4 different bands and set them up to different bands, change it around, swap it around. Maybe do 3, then maybe change it to 4, maybe even go to 5, and just start soloing the bands, not when you're applying compression, but just so you can use it as a listening tool, just to really understand what kind of instrumentation and frequencies apply to the different bands and what they sound like and what you may need to then do to really get the best out of those particular frequencies. EQ, maybe use an analog emulation rather than a very visual EQ, because it's very much going to force you to focus your ears and your attention on what the song sounds like rather than what the frequencies look like. Then use something like the TDR Kotelnikov or something that's got that delta function, because it's really going to allow you to hear what's being compressed. And if you've got a preconceived notion as to what it is that you want to control with compression, if you then use that delta function, you can really listen, is it doing what I want it to do, and use that as a great reference tool for your critical listening. Volume matching is going to be key, so really try and think about your volume matching when it comes to practicing with your critical listening. I love the ABLM plugin by TB Pro Audio, but use something that's really going to help you volume match your before and after processing, so you're only focusing on what the plugins are doing from a tonal perspective rather than from a volume perspective. And then lastly, referencing. I've spoken about this so many times before, but really focus on your references. Really try to draw inspiration from them and make some notes. What is it you like about your references? And don't just focus on references in terms of put them inside of the DAW and start practicing that way. Just when you listen to some music, make some notes. What is it you really like about a song from a particular artist? Is there something in the low end? Is it maybe some more air that they've got? Is there a particular mid-range punch? And really kind of start to understand how some of the more finished and professional products that have come out from the commercial releases, what they sound like, and try and draw inspiration from those tracks as well. So that's it for this week's video, and I hope you found these tips useful. When it comes to critical listening, there is a lot of practice and repetition needed, but hopefully these 5 different tips will really give you some focus and guidance on how you can up your critical listening game. So if you use them, let me know how you get on in the comments down below, because I'm really keen to understand whether you guys are making use of these different tips and whether you find them beneficial. So please let me know. If you do want to know more about digital mastering, then make sure you hit that subscribe button below and make sure you tick that bell and select all to receive notifications on all of our videos moving forward. And finally, if you want some more advanced support, then I have opened up a mix and mastering critique service through Fiverr.com, and I'll leave links in the description down below of where you can find more details about the mix and master critiquing services that I'm offering. So if you do want that advanced help, then once again, links in the description down below. It will be advertised through Fiverr.com, where I can offer you a mix and master critiquing service. So I hope you found this useful, and all that's left for me to say is I hope you'll keep safe and well, and I'll see you in the next video coming real soon.